Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the shadows, into the haunting world of what is, for my money, one of the most powerful anti-war poems ever written, Wilfred Owen's Strange Meeting.
But first, I want you to think about something. A single, chilling question. What if you came face to face with the enemy you just killed? I mean, really, what would you even say? More importantly, what would they say to you?
You know, this isn't just some hypothetical question. 1 week, just 1 week before the end of the First World War, a young soldier named Wilfred Owen penned his own answer. And in doing so, he created a masterpiece that feels like it's speaking to us from beyond the grave.
To really get this poem, we have to understand the world that created it. This was a time when poetry itself went to war.
See, before World War I, war was often sold as this grand adventure. It was all about glorious heroism, patriotic duty, national pride. But the reality of trench warfare, it was nothing like that. It was brutal violence, meaningless slaughter, trauma, and shell shock. And this awful new reality shattered those old illusions. It gave birth to a whole new kind of poetry, one that spoke not of glory, but of pure, unadulterated disillusionment.
So let's meet the man who became the voice of this grim new reality, Wilfred Owen.
Owen's life story is just tragic. He enlists in 1915, probably full of those same patriotic ideals. But by 1917, the war had completely broken him. He was hospitalized for shell shock, where he met another poet, Siegfried Sassoon, who basically told him, you have to write this down. You have to tell people. And that sparked this incredible, intense year of creativity where his most powerful poems just poured out of him. And then, in the war's final, cruelest twist, he was killed in action, 1 week before the armistice was signed. It's heartbreaking.
Okay, so with that heavy reality in our minds, let's descend into the poem itself. It begins right after the heat of battle has faded. Our narrator thinks he's escaped the fighting, but he hasn't found safety. No. Instead, he's heading down some profound, dull tunnel. And listen to this imagery. It was scooped through granites, which titanic wars had groined. This place wasn't built. It was carved out by ancient, massive wars. He's literally left one hellscape on the surface, only to enter a much older, deeper one below. And this tunnel, it's filled with what he calls encumbered sleepers. Dead or dying soldiers just groaning in the dark. As our narrator moves through them, one of them suddenly springs up and just stares at him, and the look on his face is one of piteous recognition.
Now, this is where it gets really chilling. Owen doesn't need fire or demons to tell us where we are. He uses this one awful human detail. The other soldier gives a dead smile. And in that single, lifeless gesture, the narrator knows with absolute certainty, this is hell.
And that brings us to the very heart of the poem, the conversation that happens next. Between these two soldiers, these former enemies, now just ghosts in the dark. The narrator tries to comfort the other soldier, saying, hey, there's no reason to mourn here. But the other man just shoots him down. He's not mourning death itself. He's mourning something much, much worse. The undone years. All that lost potential. The absolute hopelessness of a life cut short before it was ever really lived.
And his regrets are just profound. He mourns the beauty in the world he can no longer go out and find, the joy he can't bring to other people, and maybe most importantly, the wisdom he gained that he can now never share. It's such a powerful statement about the real cost of war. It's not just the lives lost, it's the futures that are completely erased.
So what's his greatest regret? He says it right here. It's being silenced before he could tell the world the truth untold. And what is that truth? It's simple and it's devastating. It's the pity of war, the pity war distilled, the pure, concentrated sorrow and pointlessness of it all.
You know, this soldier truly believed he could have made a difference. He says he had the courage and the ability to change things. He was going to go out into the world and wash it clean, not with more blood, but with truth. But war got to him first. It silenced him before he ever had the chance.
And all of this builds and builds to the poem's final, absolutely devastating reveal. Its heartbreaking climax.
With just a few simple words, the second soldier reveals the poem's central tragedy. I am the enemy you killed, my friend.
And just like that, everything clicks into place. That line from earlier about the piteous recognition, Suddenly it makes perfect, horrifying sense. The soldier wasn't just staring at some other ghost in hell. He was staring at the man who took his life, the man who killed him yesterday.
And the detail that gives it away is so small, so human, that it's almost unbearable. He says, "I knew you because of the frown on your face." It was the same frown as Killer wore as he ran him through with a bayonet. In that one split second of violence, these two men, these two enemies, were bound together for eternity.
So what is the legacy of this poem? Well, let's look at how Owen's work really did change the way we talk about conflict forever.
Owen was a technical genius. He famously used something called para-rhyme. It's where words almost rhyme, but they're just off. Think groined and groaned, or hall and hell. It creates this jarring, unsettling feeling. It's like the poetry itself is broken, incomplete, a perfect mirror for the psychological damage of war, for a world that's been fractured. And that, ultimately, was Owen's mission. He saw himself as a witness, and his poems were his testimony. He was determined to give a voice to the millions of soldiers who suffered and died in silence, to expose the pity of war with an honesty that still hits you right in the gut more than a century later. And so, Strange Meeting leaves us with this one final, haunting thought. If the walls of hell could speak, when you strip away all the uniforms and the flags and the politics, what story would they tell? Would it be a story of enemies locked in hatred, or would it be the much, much sadder story of friends who just never had the chance to meet?